How's everybody doing tonight? We good? Did you eat some food? Was it good? Are we good to go? Alrighty. Well, my name is Bryce Taylor, and welcome to the CEO conversation on BMore Me. Before we get started today, I'd like to introduce our CEO, Dr. Sanalisis, and some opening remarks from her.
Well, good evening, everyone. It is great to have you all out, and everyone who will be with us long distance or who will see this video as we come. The great part about tonight's topic is it gives me the opportunity not to really have to say all that much, because the folks who are living the BMore Me experience are here with us, and they, I think, have far more firsthand experience with what it feels like, looks like on the ground, to teach and to be in a BMore Me classroom and to plan for it. I will just start by saying the origin or the idea for BMore Me really came from a sense as I was out in the community and talking with others that given a lot of the challenges in our city and a lot of what our young people, and frankly all of us, hear a lot about the fact that Baltimore's story is not always told, and our young people don't often get the chance to see their Baltimore, their reality portrayed in their classrooms. BMore Me was really a way and conceived out of the idea that young people's identity is grounded in part in place, as we all are, right? Where we grow up, what we call home, where we call home, and that Baltimore is actually an incredibly rich city with a rich history that is not just one that we hear in the media, but is actually one filled with heroes, with history of achievement, with history of breakthrough, with history of leadership. And we wanted our young people to be able to see Baltimore as a classroom, as an extension of them, and quite frankly, for them to see themselves and learn about their place in a long tradition of history, particularly of underrepresented communities within the telling of Baltimore's history. So whether that be African-American community or the immigrant community, we know that there are many stories, many places that comprise Baltimore, and I was just really excited by all the people to my left who have brought what was initially an idea to life in a way that the intent was really to give young people a connection between their learning every day in school and the lives that they were living, and frankly their dreams and talents. And oftentimes we don't get to talk about that, and that it is part of a long legacy. And I am a history person. I believe that knowing your history is a real important part to grounding and anchoring who you will become, and whether that's family history, good and bad, city history, good and bad, there is strength everywhere and in every family, every individual, every community. And one of the great things about Baltimore, not as someone who was not born here, the more I dug into the history of Baltimore, the more I was like, this is a fantastic city with a fantastic history, and we want our young people to know that. And when I met with neighbors, when I met with community people, seniors who said, there's a whole lot of history that our young people don't know about our city that we think is important and important to pass down. So this is our kind of first launch in this, but really I think the people that make this idea live and breathe, as I've noted before, and don't you like how I shift all the responsibility really quickly? But I really think are the teachers who are represented here, the curriculum designers, and most importantly, the young people themselves. Because frankly, if they don't find value in the work, then it really doesn't make sense to do it. So without further ado, I am actually going to turn it back over. Are you hosting the full evening, Bryce?
Yeah, I think I'm just doing the
Okay. Well, okay. Okay, well, why don't you just take over the moderation part? I'm going to turn it, the moderating part, and I'm going to turn that over to Bryce right now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Alrighty, thank you, Dr. Sanalisis, for those amazing remarks. Once again, my name is Bryce Taylor. I'm a senior at Bard High School Early College, and I'm also on the student media team. And tonight, I will be moderating this amazing panel. But before we get started, I'd like for everyone on the panel to introduce themselves. We can start from this end here.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Janice Lane, the Executive Director of Teaching and Learning in Baltimore City Schools.
Hello, my name is Sydney Thomas, and I'm a middle school teacher at Halliburton Academy, as well as an MCL lead.
Hi, my name is Kieja Baxter, and I am a student at Halliburton Academy, and Ms. Thomas is my teacher. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Whitney Bierenbaum. I was a teacher for 13 years. I taught middle school, and now I lead Charm Voices of Baltimore Youth, a literary magazine that's student-led, and we produce student magazines, and we have one that's hot off the press.
Hello,
I don't know. Is it on? You gotta press the button.
My fault. Technical difficulties. Hello, everyone. My name is Amber Lyles. I am an 11th grader at Western High School and a BMore Me student fellow at Baltimore City Public Schools.
Alrighty. So, without further ado, let's get this started. So, the first question of the night is for Ms. Thomas. How are you, Ms. Thomas?
I'm doing great.
Alrighty, let's get into it. So, how does how does BMore Me embed equity into social studies?
I think it does a wonderful job because it does give them a chance to explore so much history around Baltimore. So I know with the sixth graders, they were able to look at heroes, and some of them picked some of our local heroes like Devin Allen, and he even came into the classroom, and students got to interact with him, and they took pictures with him, asked him questions. So they got to experience firsthand someone who is in Baltimore, from Baltimore, basically doing great things for Baltimore. And then right now in 8th grade, we're looking at the different narratives like the dominant and the silence narrative of Baltimore. And I think one of the best things that I've taken is that students have been able to come to me, like one student in particular gave me her reflection. And she said typically when she hears stories in particular of black people, she hears it either is black people tearing things down, being killed, or killing someone. And she said now that she's in history and she's hearing all of these different narratives, understanding different perspectives, she understands that that's not the case, and that, you know, people build things, people fought and did all of these amazing, wonderful experiences throughout history. So I think that is the best thing, is that it has opened up so many like possibilities for students, so that the dominant narrative of negativity is not something that they walk away with or internalize.
That was amazing. Thank you so much, Ms. Thomas.
You're welcome.
All right, our second question is for Kieja. How are you, Kieja?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. Okay, so what is an issue that is important to you?
One issue that I feel that is important to me and my community is gun violence. And I feel that this is the important issue because it is something that I feel that we should have awareness about, and that that as somebody from the youth, we see it every day, and it has impacted my community in a negative way.
I completely agree with you. Now, why is it important that teachers and schools, they give the students the chance to advocate for issues dealing with lessons and classroom problems?
I think it is important for schools and teachers to advocate these issues, to make awareness about what not only the community faces, but especially the youth. I think it's important for me and Amber to be here, because if we don't speak for us as the youth, then who will?
All right, thank you so much. Now, speaking. That was powerful. Now, speaking of Amber, how are you, Amber?
I'm good.
Alrighty, this next question is for you. So you are leading students in helping create a BMore Me student showcase. How cool is that, first of all? A BMore Me student showcase created by a student. Let's give a round of applause for that. Now, can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, the showcase is on April 27th from 4:30 to 6:30 at Forest Park High School. We are still in the planning process, but it will start with a whole group presentation with multiple breakout rooms, such as town hall advocacy, student and community art gallery, and a Baltimore past, present, and future. And that's it.
Alrighty. Now, not only is this a showcase for BMore Me, but it's a student-produced, student-led showcase. Why is this so important?
It is important because students' voices are finally being heard through showcasing their talents and learning about their community all at once. Also, learning does not just happen in the classroom, but in your community, in conversations with friends and family, and in getting to use your voice, just like the My Voice, My Choice showcase.
That was beautiful, Amber. Thank you so much.
You're
Our
welcome.
next question is for Dr. Santelises. Now, can you tell me, you spoke earlier and you had remarks about about BMore Me. Can you explain to me how that, what connection that has to your blueprint for success?
So one of the real powerful connections for me with regards to BMore Me and the blueprint is that the blueprint really is our plan for how we are organizing our priorities, work priorities as a school district in terms of what we're focusing on. There are 3 areas: literacy, student wholeness, and leadership. And BMore Me, actually, Bryce, is, I think, a wonderful integration of all of those, right? It's very heavy and a literacy focus. Young people can tell you about all of the reading that they do, the writing, the research that they have to do. So they're actually using and applying those literacy skills. I think the leadership, you just heard from Amber about young people being able to come in, showcase their learning. And then I think the wholeness piece really comes into play in that our young people are not just one-dimensional, right? They're not just who they show up to be when they turn in their math homework. They're not just who walks down the lunch line. They're young people who are taking in some of the same messages, thinking through really deep issues that impact them on a daily basis. And so I think the wholeness piece that we saw, that we heard about earlier when, is it Kiesia? I said it right. Woo. When Kiesia was talking, and she talked about like the challenges that she thinks about all the time and some of the messages and how she processes that. And so wholeness really means that you are, yes, a thinking and a writing person, but you are a citizen. And these are future citizens of Baltimore. They are the ones who are even now really kind of forging the path that our city will take over the next decades. And so BMore Me really is a great example of how you can bring learning together and really acknowledge young people from a variety of standpoints.
Alrighty. Our next question is for Ms. Lane and Ms. Thomas. Ms. Lane, first of all, how are you?
Doing wonderful, Bryce. How are you?
I
have to say, I've been on a lot of panels with Bryce, and he usually comments that I'm the oldest person here because of the gray hair. So I'm happy that I'm going to name it first, Bryce.
That's okay, because I got some too.
There we go. We're the bookends on this side, Dr. Santelises.
Alrighty. So, can each of you share a little bit more about the details of BMore Me?
Sure. I can start, and then you can jump into the classroom details.
Okay.
I want to also just say a quick thank you because, as Dr. Santelises said, we're learning from the experts on the panel, so having our teachers and our students here, but I also would be remiss to not say thank you to Christina Ross. Christina's over there. Christina has, in partnership, been working with our social studies coordinator to develop this deep learning set for our students across an experience of time through grades 6 through 11. And this really came from the idea of hearing from our families and from our community. When we were out looking at new literacy curriculum, we heard from folks that they wanted to celebrate Baltimore and celebrate the folks of Baltimore, the richness of Baltimore, the history of Baltimore, and really look from it from a different angle, kind of what you started earlier with around the narrative, that we wanted to change the narrative and think about how do we celebrate the greatness of Baltimore. And so in the development, we were able to work closely with teachers, work closely with some deep partners around an inquiry design model, which basically is a fancy way to say that we start with a driving question that interests students. So as you heard from our students, something they want to learn about, they want to understand. And it actually creates an opportunity for students to do some of their own research, but to develop their own point of view and really think about the advocacy of what's important to them, the ownership piece around that. So by the end of the unit that they're working on, it's not just about what do we measure in the test or what are we asking questions about, but it's about our students taking informed action so that as they're engaging and learning deeply, what do they give back to the community? Whether it's the community immediately they're in within their school or outside of their community or Baltimore as a greater good. Or also things that we've seen like studying the work of Devin Allen. Devin has not only done the work in Baltimore, but is now a national model for the photography work that he's done, taking the work with Under Armour and really taking that to show what Baltimore is and Baltimore has every day to offer our students. So for us, it's really providing a well-rounded opportunity, and I think it goes back to your earlier question about equity, making sure that our students have access to those types of learning experiences that are not just literacy or math or science or social studies, but things that really they develop passions around, that they can take their own learning and really apply it to the community as a whole.
Ms. Thomas.
And so to kind of go off what she said, essentially the main point is not for us as teachers or adults to think for students, but to provide them with the information so that they can come up with their own arguments, their own thoughts, and process that, even if it may be something they may disagree with. So we do look at pictures, there's videos, excerpts from things like D. Watkinson's books, all kinds of things. So it's like a mixture of experiences. I know 8th grade, they also got a chance to come to a similar panel where they got to see some other business owners and things throughout the city, other artists, so that they can experience that on a field trip. As well as for 8th grade, this is something kind of new. I know with my class, we partnered with Charm, and so the 8th grade, they're gonna be able to tell their stories of Baltimore based on all of the things that we're doing and create their own book and have it published. So I think all of these things are kind of how it's working, but I think the key thing is that we aren't telling students what to think or how to think. We're showing them how to look at information and create things, or if they see it's an issue, that they have the power to change things and move things forward. So an adult doesn't have to be like that change maker for them. We can be that support, and they can be the voice, and they can speak up, kind of like she was saying before.
Thank you so much. This question is again for the both of you. Please, round of applause, please. So what does this look like in our classrooms?
So I would say I see lots of talking and conversations. So students sometimes, like I know the other day we read an excerpt and they were able to discuss their thoughts about what was the dominant narrative, what was the silenced narrative, why do you feel that it is that way, why do you think it is, you know, why is it presented in this way, whose voice is being silenced. So that is kind of what it looks like, kind of like an inquiry when she was saying earlier. So I would say that it's a lot of that kind of the conversation. There is a literacy piece because it's not just watching videos and pictures and things, so we do read things. And I think being able to analyze that and take it a step further. So you can have an opinion, you can make your claim, okay, but why do you say that? Where did you find this particular evidence, or why do you have this particular feeling? So I would say in what I've seen, that is how it works in the classroom. And then also collaborating with the community, so having people come in to speak to students. Like this Thursday, I know that we're gonna have a local Baltimore poet come in and speak and talk to students. So it's just a matter of giving students access so that they can make those connections. What we're learning here in the classroom, it also applies outside of the classroom as well.
Thank you so much, Ms. Thomas. Ms. Lane?
Sure, I would just add to that piece that you just closed with about how do we bring the community into the work, and how do we take our students out into the community. Can I switch with you? That's going in and out, thank you. So the idea of really understanding folks being accessible to our students, so bringing experts into our students. We are able to also start broadening the experience for learning. So we've had some amazing expert panels where we're bringing students out to hear from folks and really understand their contribution to Baltimore, but really interact with those folks. So again, talking to Dee Watkins, having Devin Allen to really pump up the students, and having great assets like Rashad Stanton, who works so deeply with our youth engagement, who really just pumps up the students to ask the deep questions of how did you get where you were? What were the struggles? How did you achieve your goals? What's next for you in the work? And creating opportunities for in-field learning, so that as our students have an opportunity to go to Under Armour and see what does that work look like day to day, and how did Devin be able to really rise above the work that he's done and have a national platform now. Also thinking about you know, the opportunity for students to showcase their work. We have the most amazing students in Baltimore, and the opportunities for them to share their voice, to share their art, to share their history, to share their thoughts. I think what you captured there was so important from the teacher point of view. This isn't a curriculum where it says these are the 3 things you need to walk away with. It's a curriculum that creates the conversation, the deep learning, the point of view, and really having students build their ownership and their advocacy and their voice, but also being able to defend their thinking. So we know it's so important now to think about what is the research, what do you hear behind you, what are evidence-based arguments that you can make, but then how do you make a claim and be able to defend what you're saying, but also do it with a level of confidence that we're seeing in classrooms.
Thank you so much. Ms. Birnbaum, how are you? Alrighty. The final question of the panel is all for you. As a former teacher and founder of Charm magazine and a Baltimorean, can you explain why the BMore Me is important to our city?
Sure. So I have the pleasure of being on the BMore Me advisory board, which is made up of community members who wear different hats in terms of, you know, what they do as their day job and what they're passionate about. And it's been really interesting to see, just to hear from different people who work in various roles around the city and the resources that they have and how they want to bring that to students. So that's, I think, you know, for anyone, I guess when I was a teacher, something that sticks out in my mind is my students had written this like book of immigration interviews with people in our community, and I remember someone who wasn't involved with the school system reading it and saying, I can't believe a middle schooler wrote this. And that feeling of just like, well, I know they can do this because I see it every day. And I think BMore Me takes that kind of little kernel of what I experienced and just offers it to so many youth and classrooms. And I love what you said, Ms. Thomas, about the students are guiding what they're doing. I think that's just so important, and I think more people need to see that.
That was great, thank you. Please.
And I do want to congratulate her and also thank her, because firsthand, when I told the students when they were selected to be published in that, they were so proud of their work, they were amazed, and it was just like a good experience for them to have, to understand, ooh, I wrote this, someone cares about what I wrote, and they actually want to publish me and hear what I have to say. So the students, they absolutely enjoy hearing that information. So I would say that Charm does give a voice to students, and it has been something that has been completely amazing, and they embraced it, and they're excited about basically sharing their voices with anyone who reads, you know, their poems or their writings, whatever they have in the magazine.
Oh, thank you. So with that being said, that brings an end to our discussion. I'd like to thank our amazing panelists, so please give them a round of applause. And now, I'd like to open it up for the audience for a brief Q&A. So if you have any questions for me or any of our amazing panelists, now is the time to ask. Do you have any questions? Any? Oh, there's one in the back.
Hello, everyone. I see that the BMore curriculum is for grade 6 and up. What about the little kids? Will there be something creative for the primary grades? Because we are Baltimore too.
No, that's a great question. As we get started, I do want to just acknowledge Councilwoman Clark is here. Mary Pat Clark is here. Yes, I didn't. We would not.
Being here. Oh, thank you for being here. Thank you to all the teachers and the supporters who have helped our children so much. It's just been great, and a wonderful principal and just a great school. So when you see me slipping out, it's just because I've got to go to something in my district where they are waiting to yell at me probably. Thank you. Thank you.
We're glad you stopped by, Councilwoman. So the question was about for the elementary grades, correct? For the younger students. So that's a great question. We are, and I will just say, even though I think she walks on water because, you know, Christina Ross has just brought a lift to this whole body of work. She is one person. Our head of social studies, is she here tonight? She's out advocating for children in other states. So we literally have 2 people across the entire district. One for BMore Me that fortunately has been supported by the Gates Foundation grant that we have, which really helped us to build this. The elementary social studies curriculum is next on our radar. So that's the way of saying we are looking at it. It is a priority. Part of why it's a priority is we need to work on it anyway, but the second reason is it's intimately tied to our whole literacy thrust, because we know that part of why we've struggled as a district with getting more young people reading and writing and listening and speaking, you know, at a college and career ready level is because years ago we diminished the role of social studies and science in the elementary school. So we are going to, if you watch in this year's budget, we will be directing more support to be able to get our elementary school social studies curriculum back online. And the great part about the BMore Me experience, even though elementary school people are a little bit different developmentally, some of the same principles apply. And so the great part about our middle and high school students and middle and high school teachers taking the first plunge is that we've learned a lot just from this work. But yeah, as a matter of fact, that's why Christina's smiling, because we sat in a meeting and I looked at both of them and they were like, 2 people can't do this for an entire district. So we are going to be devoting more to that. And really learning a lot from what we've already learned through the BMore Me. But it's a great question. Matter of fact, if I didn't know better, I would have thought Christina planted the question for you, because that is the next phase. But we are going to be working on that.
Thank you so much. Any other questions?
Hi. My name is Crystal Parsley. I'm a parent of a student that's at Barclay Elementary, so he does STEM. And I'm so glad to be with you all today. My question is for Dr. Santelises. What are your thoughts about having dual language in all city schools? Because from my experience, I've noticed that in Northeast Baltimore, the students are blocked from going to schools that have dual language if they were not there since kindergarten or 1st grade. So if they move into that area and they're in 5th grade, they're not eligible to apply. In the East, Lower East Baltimore, because the students are dual language because their parents speak the language, speak Spanish, they're basically being taught both English and Spanish. And so my questions are, what are your thoughts about having dual language in all schools? Because obviously these students will be competing with each other for jobs, and it does put the student at a disadvantage. It does put students at a disadvantage when they do not have that. So,
Sure, no. So if I had my druthers, we would have world language starting in pre-K in every school in the district. We do not have the budget for that, just plain and simple, and I'm not going to beat around the bush about that. I wish we did, we don't. What I will say is some of our dual language immersions, and for those folks who don't know, dual language is when young people actually can learn in two languages at the same time. So some of our options right now are primarily charter options. So some of the reason why the transferring in process might seem, you know, a little restrictive is because in at least two cases, those are charter schools, and so there's a different set of rules that apply. It doesn't mean we can't work with you and work with the school to see, but that's where our most robust programming is, right? So if you're looking for Arabic or Chinese or any of that, it's there. I think in some of our English language learner communities where we have large numbers of English language learners, one of the things we're working on, and we have one or two schools that have kind of taken the initial push of saying, how do we take, for example, Spanish, which is a language that it's our most widely used language other than English in the district. We have some schools that have been venturing out on their own, and one of the things that, again, you guys are asking all the right questions, this year, in this year's budget, what we're going to be looking to is to see how can we build on some of the early success of those programs and get more of them and get more schools ready for those kinds of programs. We are not, like I said, if I had my way, every school would have world language beginning in pre-K. One of the places we're focusing on, particularly as a lot of you have heard of the Kerwin discussions that have been happening around school funding, we are really actually looking to make sure we have robust world language programs even in middle, because for a lot of our middle grade students, you know, they might get world language for half a year, they might get it only in one language choice, and really, if I had my ideal, they would at least be able to pick between two languages and be able to carry it from 6th through 12th grade, which would be the ideal starting place. So we are doing more with the existing money we have. We're not waiting for Kerwin, but I will tell you, that's what additional funding enables us to do. It enables us to put some of that in place. So we're working on it. It won't be in every school. If you have questions about how to get into a charter or traditional school program that has what you want, we're more than happy. We can work with you on that. And then some families, you know, this is a choice district, and part of that is some families really want dual language immersion, but it's a heavy lift. Like it's a heavy lift, and not every family necessarily wants their young person to spend half of every day in a class in a different language. So we're trying to offer a lot of different options for families. But if there's a program that you want to get into and you want to know more about how you can do that, that's fine, and we can also let you know some of the schools where we'll be expanding it.
Thank you. I know when my child was at Roots and Branches at one point, they had a program called Smart Steps, and it's like a aftercare program, but they were teaching them sign language, and they, you know, were doing other things outside. And I think it's, even though we had to pay for it, I don't have a problem paying. I think that that's kind of the misconception, is that people don't want that. I don't think there's any parent in the city that doesn't want their kid to be equipped to be ready for work when they come out of even high school. They want them to be able to compete with the other students that are getting those dual languages. So that's just one of my concerns. And then my last question, I don't mean to jump in. I'm sorry, guys. I just have to take the floor because I do have to leave. But my last question to Dr. Santelises would be, what are your thoughts about schools that are being rated at 1s, 2s, 3s, 5s, and I know they always have these hearings where they close schools down if they don't have good performance. What are your concerns or what are your thoughts about schools that are being rated at this level, and then maybe the students, if they're not performing well in math and science, having additional, more rigorous programming for them in the curriculum so they can be up to par and be able to compete with the other students that are rated as 10s because of the tax code? So what are your thoughts on that?
Sure. So I think some of the work, and let me just make sure I'm hearing right. So in terms of the ratings, Are you referring to the state star rating system, the 1 through 5 system? Is that what you're referencing?
I believe they get rated from 1 to 10.
No, it's actually 1 to 5.
Okay.
That's why I just want to make sure.
Either way.
Okay.
And I believe it was based on school scores, like there's math and reading scores. But if these students are performing badly on math and science or whatever they're being graded on, I think it's reading and math, then shouldn't they be getting more curriculum? Well, shouldn't they be getting more emphasis put on that at a younger age so that they're prepared to take those 4th grade and 5th grade exams?
That's right, and I just wanted to make sure, so for everybody who doesn't know, the state has a ranking system that ranks schools from 1 star to 5 star based on a variety of factors. You're absolutely right. Some of what schools are rated on is their actual student achievement scores. There are many other factors that they're also rated on as well. What I would say to you is that it's part that I agree with you, and it's part of why over the last 2.5 or 3 years, we've done major work in adopting far more rigorous math curriculum and far more rigorous ELA curriculum. And teachers here can tell you, teachers other places will tell you, the curriculum in those 2 subject areas is far more closely aligned to true college and career curriculum than we had previously. So that's 1. 2, we know that schools have different ratings for different reasons. So if you look from the first year the ratings came out to this past year, we had a number of schools that actually moved out of the 1-star category, and that was because some of those schools had additional supports that weren't in place. There were some of those schools that frankly closed, a combination of both traditional and charter schools that frankly, over a long period of time, if you're not producing for young people, that might be an option. So one of the things that we actually were recognized for was moving significant numbers of schools out of the 1-star category through a combination of support and then where appropriate with renewal, needing to provide families with another option. The other piece, and this is connected to the first question on social studies, is that we really are reinvesting as we have the last 3 years. We've already done math and ELA. We have a number of schools where we have expanded science programming in elementary schools with science curriculum that was developed in partnership with Johns Hopkins University, and a lot of their, and you know because your child goes to Barclay, so that curriculum has spread from the first, God bless you, handful of about 4 or 5 schools, of which Barclay was first, to now how many schools do we have, Jenny? So it's across the district right now. So I would say over the last 3 or 4 years, we've actually done major work to revamp the curriculum, the everyday piece, but it is a combination of interest, right, which you heard up here, right, that you can change the books and the texts that young people are using, but if the connection is not there and they're not engaging in the learning, then you can change curriculum all day long, but you won't have young people engaging. And I think if you look at, and you know as a parent, if you look at the Sabez science curriculum, there's a lot of connections between what you've heard through BMore Me, right? Real life problems, right? Real situations, while at the same time learning real science. The same is true from what you heard in BMore Me. So actually, I'd say over the last 3 years or so, we've actually done a lot of work on that for exactly the reasons that you said. Yes, we want more schools in the 5-star range, but we have a lot of schools on the move too, far more than we did 3.5 years ago. And I just want to say, even though he's taking a picture right now, a warm welcome to Councilman Pinkett, who is also here. Just say hello to him as well.
All right, do we have any more questions? Anyone?
I'm Yason Young. I'm actually running for mayor in this upcoming race. A couple of my platforms are actually based upon youth development and schools and stuff like that. And so now it's working. I believe one of you ladies said it kind of resonated with me about the narrative being instilled in the program. And so I developed a question. How are students being taught or prepared to maintain and be consistent in the empowerment and the difference in narrative that they are being exposed to within the program once outside the school's doors? I don't know if you need me to repeat it.
So pretty much how are they taking their learning outside of the classroom?
Yeah, so how is it, when they're faced with violence or they're faced with, harsh family situations or whatever's going on with them, how are they able to maintain and be consistent in what they're getting from the program.
Okay, so I can only speak for what's in the classroom.
Of
So I
course.
know that when we teach these things, I know like I worked on the 9th grade curriculum too, so I know that it is consistent throughout, starting in 6th grade up through high school. And also again, when they get to go to these various community forums and also get to talk to different people within the community. Also field trips to various museums so that they can experience like the different history. So for example, like when we're in US history, we learned about the Revolutionary War. Can we talk about the black soldiers that were here? And just hearing those different stories and speaking to that, as far as specific programs, like a mentor type program, I don't see anything necessarily in plans like right now, but there are different organizations and community members who I know who have stepped up when I've asked for them to come into the classroom or to speak to students or anything. They're there and they're willing to step in. So I can only speak from that personal experience of mine.
Give it up for Miss Christina Ross.
This one. All right. I just want to add that one of the things that we're doing, and actually Barclay is one of the schools. We are piloting a BMore Me after-school club for students, and the mentors, and it includes a mentorship piece. Mentors from North Avenue and Central Office are mentoring students at, right now it's 3 schools. ACE is one of them, Barclay, and then Marie G. Faring. And the hope of the club is that in addition to providing students with an opportunity to build these relationships with some folks from district office, and adults that are not their family or teachers. They also have an opportunity to explore Baltimore and areas that might be of interest to them. So tomorrow, actually, we're having our first experience at Under Armour. So we're taking the 7th graders from the clubs from the 3 schools to Under Armour. In 2 weeks, they're going to City Council, where they'll have the opportunity to work with City Council members on issues that they care about. And then they're also going to be visiting Visit Baltimore, where they'll get to learn a little bit more about the external facing work of Visit Baltimore. So there's a start to getting out beyond the classroom walls and that.
I just want to piggyback on what Christina was saying also. I think there's so much power and potential in this curriculum of engaging community and engaging people that might not feel connected to an individual classroom. But I know, like Ms. Thomas, reaching out to artists and poets and even people that students may have read about in the paper to actually come into the classroom. And I think there's just so much potential, and it's amazing to see what students have already been able to produce. And I mean, what so many people have said is I think students they do their best, and they do their best when they see the impact of their words and their projects, and they see the difference that they're making, and it's cool for the community to be able to see that too.
Okay. I like that we get this opportunity to talk about these issues because I feel that, like, besides, like, when Miss Thomas, we was teaching about learning more about the curriculum, Miss Thomas asked me, like, why is Baltimore home? And it shouldn't be a difficult question for me to ask when I've been here my whole entire life. And this curriculum helps me learn, like, how much culture it is in my city, and engraving lessons, and helps me, as me being a youth, to get back on not only how I've experienced gun violence, like I've lost family members, but how I witnessed it, and how should, in my community, how we should, like, how it helps, everybody else learn about it and make awareness. So this could be like something that shouldn't be as big as a problem as it is now.
Nicely said, Kieja. Do you have any other questions from the audience? One more?
Final question to Bryce.
Ooh, for me, okay.
Yeah. Who deserves a monument?
Could you repeat that?
Who deserves a monument?
Who deserves a monument?
It's a BMore Me question.
Who deserves a monument? Oh. I wasn't ready for this. I gotta think about this. Can I phone a friend? Off the top of my head, in Baltimore, who could I give a monument in Baltimore?
I'm gonna give Bryce a little bit of think time, because now he's feeling. But just for those of you who don't know, as Bryce is thinking, this was the organizing, or is the organizing question for the 6th grade course of study. Ms. Thomas will let me know, as well as Christine. And I think the great part for me, as somebody who didn't get a chance to experience it, see, don't you like how I'm giving you wait time there, Bryce? As somebody who didn't get a chance to experience it, what was so uplifting was how quickly our young people gravitated towards leaders in our city that aren't necessarily, not necessarily known. Like, some people know, right, who D. Watkins is, but not everybody, right? But these are people that aren't always kind of plastered in a formal textbook, but that they discovered based on their own research. And I think one of the biggest lessons, you ready? One of the biggest lessons for me, and something that was really important, was for our young people to know that actually heroes, some of the best heroes, some of the people that have the biggest impact, are the ones in our own neighborhoods, our own, our own champions, our own artists, our own civic leaders. And that part of this was amazing when it actually came to light. I'd encourage you to read. Baltimore Sun did a story on it. And it really was powerful way to reinforce the promise and the strength of our city through the eyes of students studying it. And now I'm going to turn it back over to Bryce, because I bought him a lot of think time.
You did? You really did. And I've been thinking about this for a while now. If I could give a monument to anyone, I'd give one to you, Dr. X, for being the best CEO our city schools have ever had.
Let me tell you what my husband says. My husband's Dominican, and what we say when people are really layering on thick is mucho muela. But I appreciate that, Brian.
Well, I think that brings us to a conclusion. All righty, I want to thank our panel one more time for coming out, and the amazing audience for your questions as well. Thank you guys so much. Have a nice night.